In part 2, we finished by adding the different behaviors to each of our date layers, but we really haven't changed those settings. So we need to turn on those as we can see them one at a time so we can actually change those and get our ranges back. So to make our ranges back to normal, we need to press option 6 in our canvas. I'm sorry, option X in our canvas, and then that'll take our play range back. And so we have worked on 1984, 85, and 86. So let's turn on 87 and look at 87, and we could go through each one, but I'm going to pause the video here and let you work on how you want these to be. So right now this looks similar to what happened in 1985 with our date. So I'm going to pause the video and let you change these up the rest of the years until you get a sense of how it all looks together. So I have turned back on all of my dates so I can see them all as they're playing around the sequence. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I've done for my sequence. So 84 just going back, 85 going to the corner, 86 motion path, 87, 88, and so you can see you don't want them to be all the same, so it's like every other one's moving a motion path. Some of them are just thrown and twisted and so on. Okay, so that is the dates section of the motion using basic motion behaviors. So next we're going to use what we call simulation behaviors. Some graphics want to try to mimic real-world movements such as an object accelerating or slowing down to a stop and imitating motion that's inertia or gravity or some other natural force. So to animate the photos group, we're going to have them fall back into Z space, and we are going to apply a behavior called attractor to an invisible layer, and this layer will act like a black hole that's attracting meteors as they pass by. So we're going to have the dates turned off, and we're going to turn on the photos. Now to make this work in our photos group, I'll open it up so you can see them, we need to actually create a 3D group. So we go to Object, and then we're going to go down to 3D Group and select that, and you see that it's changed its style from something like this, or like the dates have, to something that's layered, that's somewhat 3D. So this will allow the layers contained within them to be composited based on their position in the Z axis, rather than just stacking them in a layer list. And rather than applying the behavior to each layer to move it back, we're going to have a shape layer where we want the photos to move, and we'll use one behavior to animate them all falling into that shape layer. So in the toolbar, we're going to choose the rectangle tool, and with the playhead we're going to move it back to the start, so this starts from the very beginning. We're going to drag in the canvas to create a rectangle of any size. You won't see the rectangle in the final animation, so the size really doesn't matter. However, you do want to place it at the center of the canvas, and we're going to tell it to move back 5,000 pixels back on the Z-axis, much like we did at the end of the motion path in the previous part. So we're going to use the Select and Transform tool and then press the F1 to open up the Properties Inspector, and we're going to change our positions. So first, let's just make, if we have Option Shift, and we're going to make a square, and we're going to, now let's move this a little bit more to the center. So we're going to go to our inspector and we're going to go to Properties, and we're on this rectangle. So our position is how we're going to actually change this. And so let's change our position to 0 and 0 to make it completely center. And then we're going to change our position to -5,000. And when this does, it's going to make this square in the center, but it's going to be so small that you shouldn't really be able to see it. And so we're going to have this attract the others' photos to make it pull back in that spot. Okay, so now it's really, really small, and we're actually going to turn off the visibility so we don't see it. This is still here, so it's going to still attract the photos once we apply our behavior to it, but we won't be able to see what it's actually doing as a visible rectangle. So let's open up our library, Command 2, and we're going to go to our Simulations folder, which is down here, and then we're going to use our attractor behavior on our rectangle layer. So see how it's pulling all of those things to the center of where our attractor is. So it pulls other objects toward that object. So we apply it, and now our rectangle is applied to our attractor. The pictures change from one to the next, but they don't really move right now if we play back. So like this photo should be moving, but it's not. By default, the attractor does not work in Z space. So in the Include section of the HUD, for our attractor, we have to tell it that we want it to be in the Z space. So as we were talking about, include the Z, but nothing is still happening within our attractor because it's too far away. We set our rectangle to -5,000, but our influence right here is only set to 1,000. So we need to establish a radius around that layer, and any objects that are within that radius are affected by the behavior, while objects outside of that radius are not. So we're going to drag our influence all the way down. Again, our slider is not enough. So let's go to our inspector, Command 3, and we're actually going to have to type in the number that we want to use. Let's go ahead and use 6,000 to make sure that we are getting a good range between those. Now the pictures will move back in Z space, but not very quickly. So as we move through, and you'll see they start to move, and they are going toward the center, but it's really not enough. So we need to increase our strength. So let's increase our strength, and let's change this to actually 200. And let's take this all the way. I had another option set before, so it only did 10 seconds. So now our attractor is pulling that toward it, and then each other one is pulling it too. So they're all pulling it toward that rectangle that we started with. So with our playback start, we're going to go back to the beginning. As you see, all of these are going to the same spot. And they're coming from the same spot and going to the same spot. Well, we want to kind of mix this up a little bit. So we need to be able to see more than just this area. So we're going to change our canvas size, and let's go to 25%. And we're going to look at where the other pictures are. So we need to go to View and then Show Full View Area. So we can see how big these actually are. Now, another thing that we want to do is we want to select each of our pictures, and we're going to move it to a different place. So our pictures will come from different areas. So let's move this one and see it's here, and then let's move this one down, and then move 4 here, and you see we're just kind of mixing them up a little bit. So now when we see our whole area moving back and forth, we'll see that our pictures are moving from each different spot to give us more of a option, and not everything just one spot to the same spot otherwise. And if we select all these layers, we can see what area they're actually moving to. And we could select each one and change it. Now we just kind of see all of them at once, how they're moving. So I can pull them out to see where they're going to start and then how they move back in. And I can see my bounding boxes as well to see how big they're starting or anything like that. So by applying this simulation behavior to a dummy shape layer, we've made one behavior do the work of many. And now we can make those layers fade in and spin by copying those behaviors from the dates file. But the photo layers have a different duration than the date layers, so we might have to trim a little bit for those to be in order. So I'm going to stop the video here and allow you to move some of those from our photos and from our dates area to our photos area. So if you want to add some spin and fade in and fade out, you can do that to your video layers as well.